All right, so I'm going to show you guys how to do some play time with your dog that's going to help them become physically and also mentally tired. So there's definitely a lot of issues with dogs playing games that are essentially a little bit mindless, where the game just kind of keeps going and going and going. There's no end to it until the dog's just essentially exhausted. And you probably have noticed, right, playing these types of games with your dogs, as time goes on, it seems like the game kind of gets longer and longer, right? You have to throw that ball a lot more. The next time you do it, you get home, it doesn't really seem like your dog is super tired. They're kind of just like moving around. And so the reason for that is because when you're playing a mindless game, you're not really challenging their brain. You're actually just kind of building stamina in your dog, right? So you're kind of just building an athlete. And so there is definitely a way to play with your dog where you're not only knocking out like mental exercise for them, but you can also develop essentially kind of like brushing up on things that you want them to keep doing, right? So commands is a pretty common one, right? So sit, down, stay, drop it, those kinds of things are really good commands for your dogs to be pretty good at, right? It's a good foundation to have. Commands is just a pretty common thing to have with your dog. And also with a game that has essentially like a set of rules to it, you can also help them with their impulse control. So impulse control is really important to build in your dog. This is going to help them understand how to not want to lunge on the leash towards something they really want to get to, right? Or jumping on someone, right? That's all like really impulsive behaviors. And so you essentially want to teach them and help build that impulse control in them, and have them understand that they need to hold themselves back until you kind of give them a signal where they can just kind of go for it, right? So creating a game that includes things like that mental stimulation is going to help a lot with getting them to be tired. And then you also have a dog that's a little bit more trained than what you started with, right? So I have a couple of toys here. So I have a Chuck It with a ball. This is probably the most common one that people use with their dogs. I also have a flirt pole. This is a little less common, but there are some people who know what this is. So a flirt pole, excuse me, flirt pole essentially looks like a giant cat toy, right? So you got a stick, and then you got some kind of dangly thing at the end. This is actually pretty ideal with dogs who have herding instinct, prey drive, right? So this is essentially replicating an animal that they are chasing or hunting, right? Stalking, that sort of thing, right? And this has actually significantly helped my dog create impulse control around small animals. So when she was younger, she actually had pretty little impulse control around squirrels and ducks and rabbits. She just would want to just like go for it, almost in a sight hound kind of way, where she'd just become visually fixated on them and then just like go. So obviously that was an issue, right? So I don't want her running across roads to get to an animal, or right, someone's pet, right? So she did. There was definitely incident where she almost killed a friend's rabbit, right? So those are things that you want to work on with your dog, right? This also will make your walks a lot more pleasant and easier. I definitely have clients who ask me, when I go on the walk, what about the squirrels, right? A lot of dogs are triggered by squirrels, right? Just a little animal that's moving really quickly, pretty highly stimulating to most dogs. First thing is, you essentially want to teach your dog that squirrel is not going to provide them the exercise or the stimulation that they're looking for, right? So that's essentially why they're going after the squirrel, right? They're not super tired, they just want to go, right? Maybe a little bit of impulse control problem. And so you kind of want to create an outlet that's productive for them, right? So it's not exactly a productive for your dog to be yanking you around on the leash or running across roads to get to a squirrel. Now you can make that outlet into something that's more productive, right, through play, right? So you're essentially kind of creating the scenario of them chasing a squirrel, but it's totally under your control, right? So the toy can help with that. So again, the flirt pole can help with total control of like that prey drive or that need to just like run as hard as they want. So that's something that you guys can do. So I'm going to first kind of show you guys with just kind of a game that a lot of people play with their dog, which is just fetch, right? So obviously she's a poodle retrieving breed. So if your dog is into fetch, this is going to be a really good one. So I like to include commands. I'm not going to use my e-collar with her. I do have the things on me. I have the remote over there. She has the e-collar on her. And that's really just for conditioning purposes. Again, just for having her wear it all the time so she doesn't get collar smart or wise. So when you start with the ball, right, obviously you want to start where the dog is not super crazy, right? So if your dog is already super crazy just seeing the ball, go for a long walk, right? Just get some energy out so they're not too crazy and they have a little bit less energy so that they can listen to you. So I'm going to show you what I do with my dog here. Sit. Okay, so command for sit. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to essentially tell her to hold herself back as I throw the ball. Down. Go get it. Okay, so I told her to down after I asked her to hold herself back. And then she went to go get it. Good girl. After I released her on command. Drop it. Now, so there's a lot of people who have problems with the drop it, right? So once the dog gets the toy, they're really hyped with it. They don't want to give it back. So how you can teach drop it is pretty simple, right? So you want to have like a leash on your dog. And how I teach it is you just hold pressure with the leash. And as soon as the ball comes out of their mouth, the pressure on the leash goes away. You want to repeat that until the ball is truly yours, right? So what I mean by that is when you reach for the ball, they're not trying to lunge for it and trying to compete with getting to the ball faster than you can. So that's just something, right? And you obviously, these commands, right, you want them to get somewhat proficient at it before you start implementing it in playtime, right? So you can do these things inside your home, right? So you can just kind of have the ball here, right? Throw it, okay, right? Have her get it, drop it. So that's something you can do inside your house, right? Just starting off low distraction. Obviously, this is a higher distraction area. We're at a park, pretty busy. And so there's things going on that normally maybe other dogs may get distracted by, or they get overwhelmed and they can't really listen to you very well. They're just kind of struggling. So start off really easy for your dog. Teach those basic commands, right? Use some positive reinforcement with those commands. You can do negative reinforcement with pressure on the leash, that sort of thing with the commands as well. That's totally fine. And then you start kind of implementing it in the game, kind of makes it a little easier. So I'm going to show you another example, right? So I'm going to do a little bit harder of a command for her. Back, back, sit, back, down, play dead, go get it. Yeah, so I gave her kind of like a list of commands before she can get the reward of the ball. Good girl. Drop it. So again, this game, this type of game that I'm playing with her is going to mentally challenge her physically and mentally. And that's when you get a more fulfilled, tired dog. So now I'm going to show you what I do with the flirt pole. So a little different. So I'm going to go ahead and get her into a sit, and I'm the one that's going to walk away from her. So this in itself is her practicing, not recall, impulse control, right? So she's got to hold herself back. She can't just go for the toy. So if you would like to teach this to your dog, have them on a leash, right? You can have them hold a sit or a down, walk a couple of feet forward, and then have them go for it. You don't have to walk as far as I am, especially if this is like their first go at it, okay? So some impulse control here, moving the toy around, she can't get it. I can do a hand gesture command from afar. So again, this is all mental work here. And then the physical part, obviously, is when she's gonna go and get the toy. Go get it! Right, so having it zoom around, bring it on the ground, having it go in the air, all those kinds of things can replicate a small animal, essentially. Drop it. Right, so again, impulse control there, some command stuff. And so those kind of things are going to help your dog get a lot more tired when you're playing with them. And you're also at the same time creating a dog that has that impulse control and is a little more trained after the session, right? So it's not like a mindless game where you're just throwing the ball and the dog's getting it and eventually gets exhausted. So that's something that you can do with your dog. If they like tug, right? Something similar, right? So she's not really much of a tug dog. However, what it would look like, let's see if I can get her to just grab it. Come on. Good girl. Come on. Yeah, come on. Good. Come on. Come on. Get it. Good girl. Right? So you would have them tug it, right? And then drop it. Sit. Good. Right? So again, let's say this is a tug. You get them to just grab it. You're going to have them go crazy with it, and then you're going to ask them to drop it. That's usually going to throw off a lot of dogs, especially if you have done tug with them and it's just kind of been an endless game of tug, right? So you can still do that leash method, right? Hold the leash until they drop the toy, then release the pressure. And then right here is the impulse control, right? So when the tug is in your hands and it's yours, right? So they're not allowed to touch it or anything like that. If they try to touch it, right, you can kind of bump them away with your leg, use the leash to move them away, go into their space to move them back, that sort of a thing. And so those are going to help your dog build that impulse control. And then when you want them to start again, go get it. Again, she's not much of a tug dog, but right, so this would be the time where the dog is having it in their mouth and you're playing it with it, and then you have them kind of take a pause, right, which is that drop it. Then you can do some command work, down, crawl, up, up, sit, go. Right, so something like that. And then when you're done, right, this is also another hard part for some dogs and owners, is when you're done, this is when you have to have the dog mentally let go of the game. Okay, so this is where a lot of people make mistakes, where they will end the game and the dog has not really ended the game, right? So the dog is still trying to get to the ball, still trying to get to the tug, jumping around, that sort of thing, whining. So how you get them to let go of it, and what I do is drop it. That's enough. I pair it with, that's enough. You can say we're done, whatever it is, right? There's people that end it at whatever it is. And then what I would do is I'm going to grab a leash here. Okay. Again, if your dog is not super familiar with this, they should already have a leash on them. The leash just makes things a lot easier for you because you have a lot more control. So what I would do is you get a leash, you put it on their dog, and then what I like to do is I will actually put the toy on the ground and I'll just walk around with the dog. Okay, so I'm walking with the dog. If they try to get the toy, I'm just gonna go ahead and pop the leash. Okay, so that's letting them know we're not doing that anymore. This is also a little bit of impulse control work. Another thing you can do is have them go onto like a place or a bed, have them kind of cool down while the toy is present. The main thing is you're not just removing the toy immediately. You want to get them into a calmer state where they're following you. It feels like they're with you. They're not fixated on the toy, that sort of thing. And then once they're calm, right, in the beginning, what I would do, especially if you have a dog that's really fixated and obsessed with the toy, is I would have the dog on a leash and just get him to be calmer, and then you're walking away, and then you're putting that dog somewhere, in the crate, place, whatever it is, where they can't really see when you put up the toy, right? And then eventually you get to the place where you can do that in front of the dog. But in the beginning, again, if your dog is super obsessed, it's going to be a little easier. You get them to be calmer on the leash. You're walking past the toys. You're having them kind of chill out by the toy. They're not trying to go for it. And then you walk them out of the room, the area, whatever it is, and then you come back and remove the toy. Again, the main thing is you should be able to like move past the toy and exist in the same area as the toy without them fixating and trying to lunge for it. So that's a little bit of just kind of creating games that you can play with your dog that's going to tire them out, again, mentally and physically.